there's a great book out at the moment. It's available through amazon.co.uk. I imagine it's available through amazon.com as well. It's a wonderful book, and it sort of covers the life of a gentleman who, a bit like me, only he's been doing it longer than I have, has worked in the music business for a very, very long time. Danny Zelisko. Danny, great to speak to you and see you.
Great to be here. Where are you?
Oh, I'm fine, thank you. And it looks rather nice there today as well. You're in LA, I believe, yeah? It's been great here. You're in LA, aren't you, yeah?
No. I'm in Phoenix, Arizona. We're about 400 miles east of LA.
Okay, well, I've been there as well. It's I've been to a lot of places. I've worked in the music business a bit like you and been all over the world. I'm very lucky to have been able to do that. But unlike you, I haven't put all my memories and thoughts into a book. You've got a book out called Exce, All Areas, which I laughed when I saw it. I'm thinking, I know exactly what he's coming from with this. You must have witnessed a lot of excess in your time.
Oh, yes. You know, the whole music business is about excess. It's about excess of talent, excess of egos, excess of late nights, and everything in between.
Yeah. Well, let's go back to the very beginning of your career. I believe you started your career working out as security for Alice Cooper. What year would that be?
That was the first paying gig I had. I picked up his production manager hitchhiking on the side of the road in Phoenix. I didn't know him. I didn't know Alice Cooper. I didn't know anything. And he invited me to come down and work at the show. They were opening the $1 Billion Babies tour in Tucson. It was end of April '73.
Okay.
And I'd never had a paying gig before. I'd been around shows, I'd been around backstages, I'd done little work, but nothing really big. And the guy said, well, I can get you a gig doing security at the show. I said, great. So I went down and ended up meeting Alice. I walked into his dressing room during the afternoon, and there he was drinking beer. And he invited me to join him, just like in Wayne's World. Come on in. No, we're not worthy. And one thing led to another, and here we are. There were so many notable things that happened that led up to doing my first show that I remember all of those things probably more than all the stuff that's happened since then, because when you're in that development stage of just getting going and revving up your little engine, you know, everything that happens, every little thing that matters, that moves you to the next square, is something that, you know, you dwell on, because that's all you got to think about right then, until something else happens and something else happens, and until you finally actually make some money. In fact, it took me from that point 5 years, almost like a college education time, which is normal, 4, 5, 6 years, depending on what you're going for. But it took me 5 years before I had a paying job.
Yeah, it's amazing though, isn't it? Because the learning curve is very intense, and I guess that's why you remember it so well. Well,
yeah, because you're competing with and catching up with other people who've already been around for 5 years, and they've already done this internship or this, you know, demo. And until you get to the part where they need you and you're indisposable, your tenure is questionable at best, until you actually become somebody necessary.
Yeah. Well, the great thing about promoters, a lot of people who go to gigs, the word promoter isn't really in their mindset. They get the thing from the point of delivery. They have no idea what brought the stage, what brought the crew, the band, the performance. They just get it from the point of delivery. And then there's a few people who probably wonder what the promoter does and what he gets into it. And in your book, there's some wonderful stories. And I'm sure there are people who think it's all glam and glitz, and it isn't. unless you are the star. And they don't realize what a promoter's role is. And in this book, it really lays it down. And there's some quite funny moments in
it. Yeah. You're dealing with really extreme people, talented people, egocentric people, eccentric people. And with those kind of people and all of the different things that can happen at a show or on the road are multiplied. The chances of them happening are multiplied by as many people as there are out there on the road that you're intertwining with. It's like, look, when you're sitting in an office and you're involved with whatever companies locally and nationally, internationally, whatever you're doing, there's stuff that comes up all the time that changes the course of your day to something different than what you thought it was going to be at the beginning of the day. And mine's exactly the same way. It tends to get a little bit more focus and attention because you're talking about famous people a lot of times and stories about what rolls around with them. I don't want to pop anybody's myth, but I mean, to me, the concert promoter is there to announce that show and make sure the tickets are available when they need to be available for you to buy, so you can go to the show. But I've never asked an audience member to understand what it is that I do or why. Rather, you're paying your money to get in, and you deserve to have a first-class time, have a place to park, have bathrooms inside of there, things to drink and eat, and just a nice calm sense of you're going to have yourself a good night tonight. This is why you work, is so you can have that one night a week or a month or however often you go to shows, and you let somebody else work for you. The band on stage, all the way down to the security guard or the usher that shows you your seat. My goal for the audience member is to be treated the way I want to be treated when I go to a show. And I want to be treated like a guest, not cattle.
Yeah.
It's very, very important that these people are told before the shows, show us some teeth, smile at people, they'll trust you better, and then be nice to them. You're here for them. They're not here for you. They're not here to get in your way. They just might need help. You can go right over here. That's all. The nicer you treat people, the better off they respond, especially when they're paying to be there. Go figure, huh?
Well, it's very true. And I use that when I'm working shows as well. It doesn't cost much to smile, and it makes things go a lot easier. But
yeah,
over the period of time that you've been promoting and things like that, it saw an absolute increase, almost an explosion of movement from theaters through arenas to sports arenas and then through stadiums. And the growth of the industry, I think you got in probably at the time at its most experimental, coming up. Well, hey, let's stick things on in like Red Rocks, or let's stick something on in such and such a stadium. And I guess that's where you probably learned a lot of your craft as well.
Ago, this was not really a business like it's become. Yeah, obviously there's been concerts forever. The Beatles played concerts in the 60s, Sinatra toured, Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis, Elvis Presley, and they had those radio kind of tours where they'd have 10 bands on a bill and they'd march out and do 2 songs and come off, and you see the cavalcade of stars and all that. But it took the Beatles and some enterprising people that were paying attention. The Beatles went pretty much straight into arenas or stadiums. They never messed around in America or the North America in clubs or small theaters, really. I think the smallest theater they probably played was Ed Sullivan's Theater in New York, which was the most important theater gig they ever did. It changed the world that night. Single-handedly, they changed everything that everybody thought in 2 songs. And then they came back and did it again the same night. And then they came back again. really magical if you're really looking at this thing, and how it did change everything, and it made it possible for a lot of other groups that were inspired and influenced. And there were already singers and groups and talent out there, but there was really nowhere like there is today to shoot your sights for and your goals on, as far as like, I'm going to take this great song that I wrote and I'm going to send it to the radio. And if the radio plays it and people like it, they're going to buy the record, and then people want to see me live. And, you've developed some sort of a system in your head, but you couldn't do that before then, because in the 60s, there weren't nightclubs like there are now. Or there, the mid 60s, there were no Fillmore East. There was no organized tours among your favorite bands. So Bill Graham had the great idea to have East Coast and West Coast covered with his gigs. And as time went on, people went, oh, I could do a Fillmore here in Chicago, or I could do the Tea Party in Boston, or I can do the Electric Factory in Philadelphia. And slowly but surely this cranked up. And then it was just the natural order of things. You start in a small hall, and then oh my God, we sold out 3 shows in 5 minutes. The next time you go into the smaller building or the arena, and you move up from there to the point where you're a legitimate concert draw. And none of us, I mean, I wasn't around then. I was just a kid in Chicago then. But even after I got out of school, and I had been to some organized shows, and they were still in their infancy stages, but they were fantastic. The early shows I saw, very early 70s, with King Crimson and Humble Pie and Emerson, Lake and Palmer and Pink Floyd and David Bowie and Procol Harum. I mean, great, great concert bands. And every time I saw another show, I said, I want to do this. I don't know what I want to do. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I got to this is me. Yeah. And it worked.
It's a great thing though, isn't it? That is the kind of business in which something, if you set your mind on something, you can become that. I remember when I was at school, they used to laugh at me because I said, well, I want to be a radio presenter. I want to be a radio DJ, as it was known then. And they all like, well, that's a hobby. A bit like John Lennon's auntie saying, well, that's all right for a hobby. But I went and became one because I was so single-minded. Then I started working with bands because I was in a band at school, like most kids were. And my best mate, who I'd known since 5, he got in a band and they got signed to RCA, and then it became huge. So I then became his roadie. So it's, again, right place, right time. But the atmosphere surrounding all that was very conducive to that. Is that how it was for you? Yeah.
Thinking back, though, think back to what was going on then. Everybody in the late 50s, 60s, everybody probably pretty much lived in their own little bubbles, their own hometowns. Very, very few people that I knew back then went out in the world or moved on and became successful or famous or any of that kind of stuff. In the 60s, people didn't know about fame and that whole game the way they do now. There were always famous people, but there weren't famous young people. The Queen was famous. The president was famous. That was fame. A great soccer player was famous. A great baseball player was famous. But rock groups were not famous. And the Beatles changed all of that. I mean, suddenly there was somebody young that appealed to everybody young, and it was ours. It wasn't theirs. And kids were liberated. Kids woke up. And then, of course, the advertising geniuses, wow, the kids, they're going to spend money, or their parents are going to spend money on them. This isn't just Christmas time when we're going to spend money on the kids. They're going to buy records, and they're going to buy T-shirts, and they're going to have TV shows, and they're going to advertise on those shows. And it turned very quickly into a very big business. And look how big it is now. But this business, it's so funny to believe this, but it's true. This business didn't exist until the mid 70s is really when you started seeing a lot of organized tours and proper tours where people started from point A and ended up at Z on the other side of the country, the other side of the world. And, you know, it became one of the favorite things for young people. And as they grew older, it became really important for them to have their favorites and buy their records and pay attention to them in the fanzines, the Cream magazines, Crawdaddy, Melody Maker, all those papers that gave information. We didn't have the internet. We had to find all this stuff out from our friends or through World Press. And it took a while for it to get, you know, to us. It seemed like, you know, everything in America came from the East because of Europe, and it moved slowly to Chicago and then over to LA. So we were always behind back then. There wasn't that instant gratification or instant knowledge of the internet that you can, I mean, I can share something with you in 5 seconds. I mean, if I had to send you a picture right now, I got to go to the store, get it developed, and then, you know, get a stamp and, you know, and mail it to you. 2 weeks from now, you'll get it. I mean, it's insane when you think about it.
Yeah, but it's a case of what you know. That's what you knew then, and that's what you had to do then. Now, and it's changing so quickly. The great thing I get from your book is that apart from the fact that you work very, very hard and you're very diligent and walking that fine wire between pleasing the audience with the show and pleasing the artists who present the show, is that you've had a lot of fun and you have the passion. So, and I know you've presented shows by Ringo and Paul. Obviously, you weren't able to present shows by the Beatles, but I get from the book, it gave you a great buzz meeting those people. And it must be great to meet those people you rate so highly.
Yeah, it's an important piece, you know, of the story when you get inspired by somebody, or certain people were the ones that were in the group that really help bring you along as far as being interested to begin with, and to realize you're standing there with them and your name's on the same contract as theirs is quite a mind blower. It is.
I mean, but it must be very satisfying as well.
Oh yeah. You know, you take stock in the fact that it's happening, but you know, that old stop and smell the roses thing, very difficult to do, because if you're standing around smelling roses and you miss a beat when you're around those people and their crew, hey, quit daydreaming, let's go.
That's very true.
But I admit I do. I mean, I really look, you know, the time where I really get, when I think about all that, is when I'm going to the show and they're either going to be there or they're going to get there after I do. And you realize, you know, this moment of truth is happening. And like in both of their cases, having worked with them a number of times over the years, I mean, you're back to like being a little kid or a fan when you're about to see them or whatever, and you're going, I wonder if he's going to remember me. You know, you know, I mean, I've done Ringo shows at least a dozen times and many shows with Paul over the years. And it's really nice when they do, you know. And I don't know if somebody's on the side prompting them or not. I'd like to think they remember, but you know, God, I mean, I know how hard it is for me to remember half the stuff that I forget. So
yeah, I mean, I'm very good at remembering faces, and that proved the point to me because I toured with The Who in 1981, and I did work with Roger about 5-6 years ago. And he said, "Who's doing the interview?" And I said, "I am." And he went, "I know you."
all right.
And he said, "Recognize you," but he said, "You're that Scouser." I mean, yeah. He said, "What's your name?" I said, "John." He goes, "Yeah." And we had a great catch up. But it was quite funny because he saw me. I said, "I am." And he went, "I know you," literally straight away. I also told him exactly what he said to me the first time, and he roared laughing at that. He said, "That's very like me." I'm not going to repeat it now, but it was funny. But yeah, these people meet literally millions of people and have met millions of people. So it's always nice to think that they recognize you and they do remember you. So
yes,
I take that as a great compliment, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
that is a buzz.
Your book is full of great stories, and one which I've heard talked about is the Whitney Houston story, and it basically explains the pressure that an artist is on just before a show. You get artists who, most of them don't like to be, I want to be in my room on my own before the show, I need to get myself in the zone. Others are quite happy to still be knocking down a drink. The tour manager goes, right, you're on now, and that's it. So everybody's different, but the story about Whitney was absolutely amazing. Just like, you need to go and get him off stage. We're talking about Mike Tyson. I mean, the guy, Mike, excuse me, could you come off stage? I mean, it's a bit of a daunting prospect. But after the gig, oh, I love you, you're my savior. You know, it's amazing, isn't it, how things change?
You know, it is a big deal for people to get on stage and perform, and the fact that almost all of them that, you know, that you've known for years, even when they're new, they'll hide it from you really good. But it's like, everybody has stage fright to a certain degree, I think. Some more than others, and most of them you would never know it, you know. But it's a hard thing to do, man. It's like, you're exposed, you're up there all by yourself, and everybody's watching you. Not a good time to be self-conscious.
I've introduced loads of bands at huge gigs, and I actually don't get nervous. But then I'm not about to spend the next 2 hours trying to entertain them. I'm just here to introduce the people who are going to entertain them. Yeah, so for me, it's not a problem.
It's really not a problem for me either. I've done it thousands of times, but I got to admit, I get that rush. I get that thing before I talk, before I open my mouth, and you just pray the microphone works, because I've had it when it doesn't, and they really give it to you then. Get off, you wanker.
Yeah.